Now, Africa is poised to reap the demographic dividend when its labour force becomes the world's largest by 2035. But Africa is having a tough time addressing its biggest challenge, which is unemployment. Joining us now to discuss the role that small business can play in addressing job creation and inclusive growth is Nick Maweni, who's the Managing Director of the Black Management Forum. And this organisation hosted a discussion today on the issue of how to get inclusive growth and jobs in the South African economy. Nick, thank you so much for joining us. Of course, the Black Management Forum is an association of black professionals. What is it that the BMF believes is going to be the key to job creation? Many people argue that there is in fact no silver bullet for this, intractable challenge in our economy.
Well, a good one. Thank you very much. There is no silver bullet, that's correct. And to create jobs require a number of efforts. In fact, the good thing about this study that was released by the McKinsey, it looks at a number of issues. One, challenges that faced by Africa in terms of job creation. And also, it actually deals with something that says economic growth does not always translate into employment. Mm-hmm. So in terms of asking the question, is there a silver bullet? There isn't. What we require to do, maybe in particular as a Black Management Forum, is to how do we work closely with government and making sure that government actually create very good policies that are going to be conducive for job creation.
Mm-hmm. Now, if we take a look at the issue of small business development, there is a school of thought within economic theory that says this is the kind of route to grow the economy, and people use examples of Singapore and other places to show that small and medium-term enterprises are the way to go. Others in the trade unions take a different view and argue that unless you address the structural difficulties and rigidities in the economy, you won't get the kind of job creation that you're seeking. Where does the Black Management Forum sit in terms of what the correct formula is, if you like, to get jobs growing in South Africa?
Correct formula seems similar to that silver bullet, Karema. One does acknowledge that the bigger organization and big corporates, they really have a duty to play. But unfortunately, one has seen, especially during the economic meltdown, what has happened to some of those. We believe within the BMF that, in fact, the biggest job creators will often come from those small, medium enterprises that are actually out there. I mean, they actually, that's where the bulk of our economy is. And probably that what's required then from government is, what can you do to make sure it's conducive, it's easy for these young people to actually create jobs?
Now, of course, there's a range of institutions that have been set up. There's CEDA, there's CIFA, which is the financing institution that's supposed to give attention to small business. But we know that many small businesses are in fact going under, partly because when they do business with government doesn't pay on time. We've had the president and others speaking about the 30-day time period in which small businesses must be paid. What is the BMF doing to try and get a better deal for small businesses, and how do you manage to hold government to account on these issues?
It was quite encouraging to actually hear the Minister of Finance when he was actually cracking the whip and making sure that various departments within government actually adhere to that 30-day payment. Because if this is not done, government's sort of interventions in terms of the infrastructure growth will really go to waste in terms of making sure that jobs are created. One of the things that's raised by a number of small businesses that actually prevents them from creating jobs in some instances is they find that there is not enough deep skills from some of the people, job seekers, and also it's almost vocational studies that we've abandoned in the country. And those are kind of things that we are trying to address as the Black Management Forum, bearing in mind our role as a professional organization is that of creating as well as developing people on managerial leadership.
Let's take that issue of managerial leadership. When we look at across the South African economy, and if you look at the different sectors, from your perspective, are your big corporates getting on board in training enough black professionals to actually take up, positions within organizations? And is it happening at the kind of pace that is required?
From most of our corporate members that we have within the BMF, whenever we approach them and actually find ways that they could collaborate with our student chapter, there's never a resistance, especially when you look at in terms of the other interventions from government, in terms of the skills development levies that's available for them. So most companies, they do this very well because they actually get paid to do so. So we never find any resistance from most of our corporate members, especially when we help them out to make sure that they have a very good problem proper program that actually addresses the skills that they have within the companies.
What about the relationship between smaller and bigger companies? We often hear about the fact that, you know, there's very little transfer of skills, there's very little assistance from big corporates to smaller business, whether it's at the level of mentorship, whether it's at the level of developing products, markets. What is the kind of relationship that you would like to see as the BMF between small businesses and larger enterprises?
We're currently creating a lot of collaboration, in fact, to make sure that we deal with that gap with those that are small, that are looking for the big brothers, those well-established companies. In fact, we're very clear about it, that when we match them up, I'm talking about the SMME with a big corporation, it's there for a number of things, not just access to market, but just pure mentorship. And of course, in some cases, people do abuse this and ask for various things and bailout. And we're quite clear, we've actually structuring a very good formal program that deals with our corporates as members within BMF, as well as some of the small enterprise that we've got. Remember, in terms of the broad-based black economic empowerment, it actually deals with this in terms of enterprise development. So most companies, they love this when we present it to them.
One of the criticism that often comes from established firms about black professionals is the inability of firms to retain black skills, because people are in demand, because companies are ticking off boxes in terms of employment equity, and there is a sense that black professionals are job hunting, or rather job hopping from one place to the next. Is this a fair criticism? What has your members' experience been, of this?
It's something that's often blown out of proportion in terms of the so-called black professionals are job hopping. They are hopping because who is taking them? Whoever's employing a guy who's been with a number of companies in a short space of time, maybe he's the creator of the problem. I think what companies should rather focus on is they're not used to actually having a black sort of an executive in most cases. So there are very good interventions that they need to have in terms of how do they retain such skills. I think that's one of the things that we always address with our company, with our members in terms of companies. Find ways that you can retain these black executives that you have. And it does not always translate into money. It can translate into some very good educational program, exchange programs for some of the multinationals. There are a number of ways to actually skin this cat. There's a lot of investment that people are putting into this, and people leave.